to Canterbury, but farming in New Zealand is still attracting immigrants from the old world.
It's freezing here. What happened to all the New Zealand weather you promised me?
People like Carl and Dorothy Shannon, who moved out here from Dromore in County Down in the 1970s, when the New Zealand government was offering incentives for migrants to come and work in the dairy industry.
What were your first impressions when you saw New Zealand?
Well, I suppose I felt a bit lost because I didn't really know anyone apart from Carl and his sister. It was a bit daunting. It was beautiful. I thought it was a beautiful country, but it took at least 5 years to really settle down.
It took you 5 years, did it, to get over homesickness?
5+.
Maybe 25.
Now, yes, it's really good. There's been lots of opportunities that perhaps we wouldn't have had at home, and opportunities for our children. It's been a lovely country to bring the children up in.
What's the best thing about living here for you?
Well, it's the freedom to do what I wanted to do. We couldn't have done this back in Ireland because we would never have had the freedom, because home the farmers wouldn't borrow money. And that was the biggest thing to break when we got here, was to go and borrow money. When we arrived in New Zealand, we had £100 between us. We worked as married couples on farms, and we were saving our money, but inflation was beating us all the time. The banks weren't keen to lend us money because we didn't have enough behind us. And there was a boss I worked for 3 years, and he lent me 40,000, and it was him that got us going. We ended up buying 90 acres here, milking 65 cows, and we just kept buying small bits to what it is today. There's 1,100 acres today, and there's probably 1,500 head of cattle on the place.
What are the differences between farming here and back in Ireland?
Well, the farmers here treat the farms as a business, where at home it's more of a livelihood, where we would take more time off. We don't have the same money tied up in buildings and machinery to what the ones at home have. The cows are out 12 months a year, and we don't milk during the winter. One of the big differences is the attitude of farming here is we're in the process now of starting to hand over to the next generation. My daughter and partner there on the farm 6 years now. They did 2 years working on the farm, and now they're moving on to share milking.
Share milking is a New Zealand dairy farming tradition, a way for the younger generation here to get their start in the industry. They buy into a dairy herd and graze and milk on someone else's land until they've built up enough capital to take over or buy a farm of their own.
Better than just being plunged into it, isn't it?
Well, yes, it means they'll have an asset. Yeah. They've earned their asset.
Yeah.
Not waiting for the lid to go down on me.
When Carl and Dorothy's daughter and her husband take over their farm, they'll be inheriting a little bit of Dromore history too.
We called the farm Hipponygate Farm because my family all live on the Hipponygate Road in Northern Ireland. There's a pub down the end of the road, and they used to pay a toll of a hippenny to get through there. So that's how the road got its name, and then we thought it'd be quite a nice name for the farm.
Do you still think of Dromore as home?
Well, we still talk about home, but home is here.
Home is here because we've got my family here, our own children and grandchildren and that. But when we speak of Northern Ireland, we do say home. I guess it's just a natural thing to do because you've been brought up there. It's just a lovely connection.
And how do you feel in terms of your identity? Do you feel like you're New Zealanders or Irish New Zealanders?
Oh, got a leg in both camps. No, we're Kiwis now.
Yeah.
In the 19th century, many thousands of migrants came to New Zealand in search of gold. But for those who made it their home, it was the land that sustained them and led them to put down roots here, just as it has farmers like Carl and Dorothy, who came after them. In the final part of the series, I'm going to meet one Ulster immigrant who used his small